introduce session 2. So session 2 is about, I will be taking over the moderation due to the fact that Dr. Anne Kinyiri, who was scheduled, is indisposed, so not indisposed for today, but she'll be taking over tomorrow. So we agreed to swap sessions. This session 2 is about responsible and ethical application of AI, and I'll be picking straight from the thread of Dr. Taylor's speech when he gave a cautionary note that, hey, do we really need these things? But even if we need them, in what format do we need AI so that it does not hurt us? And the next set of 3 speakers are basically going to highlight that caution to the 4 speakers that have just passed. That yes, AI may be very powerful, but we need to watch. It may also have its own dangers. And set the stage, I'm going then to invite Mr. Mark Gaffley. Mark Gaffley is an admitted attorney with over 10 years of broad startup, in-house legal and research experience that has been gained through leading local and international companies and think tanks, including Uber, Take a Lot, Media 24, Human Science Research Council, and most recently, he joined Research ICT Africa as a research fellow. It's nice to exploit Mark's wide experience in regulating AI and digital technology in Africa by asking him to start speaking around AI in Africa. Where do the risks begin? Mark, welcome.
Thanks very much for the introduction. I'm going to kick it off now, and I've basically got one slide, but I think whilst I'm speaking, I just want you to keep this sort of dividing line in mind. And on the one side, we've got optimization, and the other ethical and responsible usage. So yeah, my name is Mark Gaffley, and I'm a research fellow with Research ICT Africa. I'm also reading towards my PhD in jurisprudence at the University of Cape Town, where my research contrasts the philosophies underpinning AI processes with those of Kantian ethics. And it is from this philosophical angle that I approach this speech today. And also bear in mind that I was specifically requested to focus on the risks that artificial intelligence technologies may bring to Africa. So please do excuse my pessimism. This question is a massive one that I could hardly scratch the surface of in 10 or so minutes, but I will try to anyway. And I'd like to do this by getting to the core of what our relationship with AI actually means. You may have noticed that I titled this speech, "Where do the risks begin?" This is intentional, as it seems to me that when assessing ethical implications of AI, many of us try to tackle the question by looking at the finished products. As an example, if a government deploys surveillance technology incorporating facial recognition, the risks may include that it was developed by a foreign company in a foreign jurisdiction, which brings issues of data transfer across borders to the fore. We may also need to assess the technology's effects on the rights to privacy and freedom of movement, to name but a few. Or if we look at the rise of automation processes in labor-intensive industries, we may say that the risk here is job loss. In Africa, this may mean no alternative job prospects, especially for unskilled labor. And indeed, these are very real risks, but they are not the risks I want to bring to your attention today. As I said, these are the risks of the finished products. They are the symptoms, not the cause. So where do the risks originate? I want to start by framing this around the endpoint. I was first alerted to the potential problem of AI by a TED talk delivered by Sam Harris in 2017, where he posed the question, can we build AI without losing control over it? In his talk, Harris draws certain conclusions about the inevitability of AI improvements. He emphasizes the seemingly unstoppable trajectory AI advancement is on. And in his words, the train is already out of the station and there's no brake to pull. Harris concludes by speaking of the unprecedented power superintelligent AI may hold. A 6-month advantage at the speed AI can process information would equate to a 500,000-year advantage over any competition. Thus, to win this race is to win the world. I would argue that we do not even need to think about superintelligent AI for this statement to be true. It is evident today that the wealthiest and most powerful governments and companies are those at the forefront of the AI race. Risk lies in our failure to recognize that we have all signed up for this race, whether we engage with the technology or not. Today, this race is informed by the idea of rapid scalability backed by efficiency and optimization of processes, with little room or pause for thought, or for assessing the consequences of one's decisions. In fact, in my research, I've come to the conclusion that fundamentally, AI is really about efficiency and optimization. This is reflected in its practical usage, where most modern AI systems weigh performance metrics over philosophies, looking for ways to enhance existing systems using existing theories, rather than to develop new ways of looking at the world. We should be mindful too that that with any revolutionary technology, the relationship between law and power is being tested. In the revolutionary process, the new confronts the established, and those on the receiving end will have to accept the new social norms imposed by AI. For this reason, we cannot look at AI in isolation, as it simply does not stand alone. AI is the new means of communication that informs the relationships that exist between us. I emphasize this point because it debunks any ideas of AI being perceived as neutral. And even if it were, in assessing risks, we need to consider that in every situation in which AI is deployed, there's a party on the other end with its own wants, needs, and desires. The revolutionary power AI brings is that with enough data, it can assess exactly what these wants, needs, and desires are. I would argue that by its very nature, AI thus presents a competitive dynamic as its only possible end, irrespective of industry or application. In trying to depict this, it's important to recognize that fundamentally, AI is actually an assemblage of a number of statistical, mathematical, and economic theories that are now being unleashed on understanding our own thoughts, actions, and habits. And then, using the information obtained, AI draws certain conclusions for its designers to make decisions on. Or increasingly, through automation processes, AI makes these decisions itself. Let's briefly examine this in more detail. Widely used theories informing rational AI decision-making include Bayes' theorem, game theory, and utility theory. Bayes' theorem is about probability and inferences based on the likelihood of particular events occurring, given the available evidence. This is achieved by assigning a number between 0 and 1 to the probability of such event occurring or not occurring. Game theory is a way for problem solving in uncertain situations. When John von Neumann developed the theory, he based it on the mechanisms of prices and products and the gaining and spending of incomes. Game theory is about games of strategy in a social exchange economy that try to obtain the optimum result or maximum resulting satisfaction. And this is where utility then comes into play. Maximum expected utility is a principle that defines all of AI and is the measure for whether an AI technology is considered to be doing the right thing or acting rationally. So, on this very rudimentary understanding, we see a philosophy of performance underpinning AI decision-making. Where do the risks begin? Perhaps it's that the decisions affecting human lives are equated to ones and zeros, or optimization, and not first to fairness and equality. AI functions in accordance with the preferences of its designers, which could actually be anything. And the less consistent these preferences are with ethical values or human rights, the more they can be buried in line after line of code. As we embrace AI technologies, we must recognize that lives and livelihoods will be left to the whims of probabilistic inferences and games of strategy. We need then ask ourselves, to what extent does AI call for prediction to become direction? Or does strategy require misdirection or manipulation? These are the key risks warranting further investigation. The real risks of AI lie in understanding that the theories I've described are not just algorithmic, but increasingly social, and are in fact replacing or directing existing social norms and values. This calls us to investigate exactly what algorithmic norms and objectives are. Is AI even capable of aligning with any African values? And is something like the ethical and responsible use of AI even a possibility given the theories built into these systems? If we are interested in the ethical development of AI, we need really focus on the technicalities that make up the AI sum and determine whether the risks begin with what AI inherently is. Thank you.
Wow, that was heavy. That was a single slide that carried it all. Thank you so much for your terrorizing the idea of the promise of AI. I will stop there. Of course, the questions shot at you would be coming, but what is powerful here is that we need to compare between optimization or efficiency and ethics or human rights, power versus law, gain, utility versus community welfare. Thank you very much, Mark. And straight, let me head on to the next speaker, and that would be Dr. Divine Fu. Dr. Divine is an expert in ethical utilization of emerging technologies, including AI, with extensive research profile. He's also the director at UMA, which is the Institute for Humanities in Africa, at Cape Town, Western Cape, South Africa. Dr. Fu, let us exploit your mind now. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Winston, and thank you very much, Mark, and also the many colleagues who have made a contribution. It's always great to be in a forum to have this conversation, and we do thank the Africa Center for Technology Studies, for the amazing work that you're doing, and you and your team who are indefatigable and putting in a lot of efforts, day and night to make sure that these conversations around technology on the continent happen. So we really appreciate the work that you do to continue to encourage many of us and push many of us, to continue to stay the course, even when we keep being discouraged. So I've been asked to speak about responsible AI, and in a way to respond to both the keynotes and also the previous conversations, and adding on to what I think Mark has just spoken about. Mark and his colleagues at Research ICT, particularly with Rachel Adams, who is not here, have been doing really fascinating work around also the question of how we decolonize artificial intelligence, and running also important projects on the continent around the ethics of AI. It is something that really interests us, and we are particularly interested in several issues. One is just the question of being human, and here we are really interested on what it means to have a dignified life with technology. Can technology offer us a dignified life? And it's a translation of development. We try to translate development not as a foreign policy intervention, but to look at it from the perspective of how it improves our lives locally. And that is why we then define development as a search for dignity, search for a dignified life. So we ask the question then, can technology, and in this instance, AI, offer us a dignified life? And if it can, how? How should we engage it if it cannot? And that's why we work around the question of the ethics of technology. We have a project called the Future Hospital Initiative, where we are just looking at the future of hospitals, whether hospitals would exist, if they exist, or if they operate, how they're going to operate, and also given the ways in which technology is beginning to redefine what health and being healthy means. What would it mean to think hospitals, especially within the context of technology, in a continent that is always seemed to be catching up, in a continent that is confronted with many of the challenges that colleagues, one after the other, have indicated. So what are the challenges we are going to face, and how do we confront these challenges? In a way, we are using this also to try to understand more broadly what it would mean to think the continent within the context of technology going forward. And one of the issues that we try to emphasize is the importance of context, which colleagues have spoken about, but also the importance of cultural context, and the importance of having to build technology on the concepts of everyday life that people locally understand. And here I want to emphasize the importance of translation and the importance of legibility. How do we make the kinds of thinking that we are doing around this technology more legible? And also, how do we make it, more comprehensible? Here I want to build on the work of people like Bruno Latour, and also the scholar Eliseo Macamo, Mozambican scholar who was based at the University of Basel, who continues to emphasize the importance of really investing on this continent on what he calls scientific conceptual vocabularies, and that there is a tendency, to always hold on to scientific vocabularies, which, even though really important, do not seem to make our everyday lives more comprehensible, both to us and also to others, and also do not make our own experiences comprehensible to us and also to others outside. He's doing this within the context of what he understands as science, and science not necessarily as something that is really bad, as we often seem to say, but also as something that really needs to be located, in particular context. So the work that we're doing on AI really tries to push this forward. When I was thinking about this talk, I was reminded of a particular character where I come from, which we have been made to understand that this character is called a witch doctor. And this is a kind of a translation. And some people like to call this character a healer. Some people like to call this character a diviner. But again, when you consider in the local a cosmology, or look at it from a local context, it's not really a witch doctor because he's not a witch. It's not really a diviner because he's not really a diviner. It's not really a healer because he's not just a healer. He is this thing, or she is this thing, and everything else. And therefore, the concept of calling this person a witch doctor or a diviner is actually to translate it so that people outside of that context can understand it better through their framework. And I think that's what we do with technology. So when you have a problem, for example, or a challenge, or you have really a celebration of something that is great in your life, one of the first persons that you really have to encounter is this person, and when you go to this person, there is a whole process and a whole procedure. And it's often, I always find it interesting when I reflect around it. So in some places, they will ask you to get a chicken, You cannot visit a person without a chicken. You bring the chicken. Sometimes they ask you to keep this chicken at home. And then when you bring this chicken, sometime in the process of having to heal you or protect you or do something, they will wrap this chicken around you. And then after, when they've slaughtered the chicken, they open it and then they begin to read. So I think what it tries to do is to collect data. And this chicken, in the process of having to do this, they collect data and then try to read, what this data is. And then once he has read, he then begins to determine what to do with you, what challenge you have, what problems you have. So if you have particular challenges, start putting certain stuff on your bodies to protect you, which things which you could define as apps. They put an app to protect you on your arm. It might be a bangle. They put an app to protect you on your neck. It might be a necklace. They put an app somewhere else. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that unless we are able to translate and able to really take our own everyday instances really seriously, we are running into a place that is very dangerous and adopting technologies, without really having spent time to try to locate them in local principles and context. Because what people understand as data and what people understand as technology is also very different. It doesn't mean that there is no investment in the process or in the logic, but that the logics that constitute these technologies in particular places are very different from how this logic should operate here. It doesn't mean that the logics that we inherit are not useful. It just means that for us to be able to really address and understand some of the ordinary issues that face us and solve those issues properly, what we need is a deep investment in the meanings of this technology. What is data? How do people understand data? When data comes from a place where the subject is predictable, like in Europe, what does it mean to be thinking about data and to be thinking about technology in a place where the subject is not understood as a post-Enlightenment Cartesian subject? Because that subject is an embedded subject. That subject is an extended subject. When I give a phone to somebody in Basel, I know where that person is. I know this person will not share. I know this person's an individual. I know this person is predictable. And I give this person an IP and I can identify this person. What does it mean to think the same to someone whom you give a computer to, and that computer is a computer of the collective? What does it mean to understand? So it is that we have to invest in this translation. We have to invest in understanding this meaning. We have to invest in particular processes, particular practices, particular conceptions of this technology that make sense to our local context. So what I'm arguing is that our push for this technology has to be a push that we must make with a kind of a mitigated euphoria. And unless we understand them locally, even the push to have technologies more ethical is problematic, because we do not have the same or similar concepts of what responsibility means, of ownership, or what agency means, or of what ethics really mean. I'm going to end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fu. That was powerful, and the message is clear. Of course, scary as always. Let's accept only AI and also build AI that is on top of what is comprehensible, both in terms of language and explainability. The logic, it needs to be, because it acts in contexts that we understand so well, the context around us. So we need to try to find a way. But now we say, can AI offer us a dignified life, and how? And if it can't, then what? We're recalling that the train had also left the station. So those are things that we really need to wrestle with. They are very complex concepts. And I await questions from people. But let me now welcome the last speaker under this session. That is Professor Ryan Abbott. Professor Ryan is a medical doctor. He's also a professor of law and health sciences at the University of Surrey School of Law. He's an adjunct assistant professor of medicine at the David Fenn School of Medicine at the University of California, Los Angeles. What I've always wondered that I will always remember, I've always forgotten to ask you how the two could be mixed at those high levels. But welcome, Professor Ryan Abbott will be speaking about AI and the law. Welcome, Prof. It seems like Professor Abbott may have fallen off because he is not part of this list. Yeah, he is not. So that's still fine. It may have been, but I thought I saw him at one time. So it's possible that he could have lost connection. Then we would straight away go to the questions and answer or open panel discussion. And I would want to open this floor to anyone who has reserved any questions for either Mark or Divine, and to please ask away. But even before we come to the verbal questions, the oral ones, I would like to ask Fiona Samuel whether there is any questions existing on the chat. This is Professor Mugabe. Yes, Professor Mugabe. Yes, Professor Mugabe. Please ask away.
Yes, thank you. No, I don't have actually really a question. I have more for a worry, and my worry is informed by, what I hear from various stakeholders, including those in academia, about where Africa should begin. Should Africa begin with worrying about the ethical issues associated with the use of artificial intelligence, or should Africa focus its energies in influencing innovations in artificial intelligence? And this worry is informed also by our previous engagement in biotechnology, where we waited until too late and started worrying about what ethical issues are in the area of biotechnology, as opposed to getting into innovation processes to influence. So I'm just raising this very broad question, broad concern. In Africa today, we tend to be investing in regulatory measures, frameworks to deal with ethical issues, when actually we don't have the technology in most part of the continent. So how do we ensure that we don't again stay focused on ethical dimensions of the technologies that we are not developing, we are not procuring and using? And I don't know whether the presenters have some idea on this. I'm a member of UNESCO's panel on ethics of artificial intelligence. And one of the concerns that some of my colleagues and I are raising is after you've developed these frameworks, what next? Do you develop the frameworks and wait for the technology to arrive? Or do you engage with the technology and learn more about the technology, then you develop the frameworks to regulate it? Hello?
Sorry, I was talking muted. Thank you so much, Professor Mugabe, opening that up. I'm thinking I'm still torn between whether I let the speakers answer or I. Is there any other question we could pick, or we go straight to trying to respond? Maybe in the absence of any hands raised, then let's try to respond.
Sorry, question. One question.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think a related question, at least, especially from the practical angle. So there's a sect of people who believe the ethics, I think, bring them forward, suffocating innovation or eating the speed at which people could be developing innovations that could start helping solve some of our societal problems. So it would be interesting I don't know whether this is what was meant by optimization. I think that's one. And then a related one is the universality of ethics and responsible AI principles. There is a feeling that some of them could be very relative. Actually, all of them could be relative to the application that you're doing, that for some, maybe the good of the application requires more stringent privacy concerns, others more relaxed. And so the idea that maybe a universal set of ethics and principles may not be practical. So if they could also address those questions, that would help. Thanks.
Okay. Good. Thank you so much, Dr. Mwebaze. I believe that is further enough. Yes, Professor Wandiga.
Chair, this is a very interesting debate because we are debating it as if the life and society is starting today. What we are not remembering is the fact that the societies and communities have been faced with such ideas for a long, long time. And we will still be faced with these ideas even in the future. But what we don't do much about in our educational system or in the church system or in the community system is to promote the learning and the teaching of not intelligence system, but logic. Logic and Augustine's teaching in the church emphasize much more deeper understanding on our system based on the community, on the society. And I'm sure we will be able to find some of these hard questions if we promote more teaching and learning of the Aristotle or the Augustine philosophies. That's what I want to add. Don't be desperate. There will be a solution, either coming from society, from the church, or from other sources, but there will be a society, and we need to learn how the society gets those ideas and solves them. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I know that I'm struggling to wrap my head around your question. I'm hoping that the others are doing better than I am doing. However, those are three questions. I think that is further enough for us to converge around it. And I don't think that it's the burden of the presenters, anyone who has an idea, but it would be nice to give first priority to the presenters, whether they have a response, but let this be in a discussion environment. Anyone who has any response to Professor Mugabe's question, should Africa focus on being wary of AI, so wary, or focus on developing useful AI? And that question was reiterated by Dr. Mwebaze. Is ethics maybe suffocating innovation? What should we be really focusing on? I'm hoping that I'm representing their questions precisely. So that is the first question. I don't know, anyone who would want to respond?
Is Mark going first?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, now I'm happy to. I'll just very briefly respond and suppose frame it within the context of my speech. But I think when I was looking at the question, I really wanted to distinguish between challenges we're facing on the continent and also some of the overt risks, which are things like, bias in systems, etc., which gets spoken about a lot, and I guess challenges there, which might limit the possible usage, is things like not having infrastructure to support AI systems and needing to get those up and running before we can engage in the ethical debate. But I think the two, they essentially go hand in hand. Like, you need the one with the other, because when the infrastructure gets up to speed, it's too late to then start addressing ethical questions. And that's, I think, when I spoke about the inevitability of it, that's what I was trying to get to there. The next question was just on whether, these discussions suffocate innovation. And I think from my career, and I suppose having the sort of inside knowledge of how companies deploy AI systems, I think I can quite safely say that it wasn't really a concern. And that's also the point I made about hiding intentions behind line after line of code. I think that rings true. Whatever the motive is for innovation, and I don't necessarily mean it in a sinister manner, that can be masked with the complexity of code and not understanding what's actually being developed. So I don't see it as suffocating. The final thing was, this question of us being faced with these ideas for a long time and having had to deal with them. And I think a point that I didn't really dwell on, which is again the focus of my own research, is how rising machine autonomy is at the expense of our own autonomy. And by this I mean, we are outsourcing our ability to make decisions, and we don't necessarily know that we are doing that. Simple example is, if I have a cough, I go to Google, I Google it, and I am given an answer from an outside party that I assume to be the truth. And then the other side of that is when, for example, in marketing, where now, because there's so much data on us, we can get sent things at times that we are most susceptible to, for example, buy a pair of shoes. But that can become more and more, that has the potential to influence the way we vote, et cetera, et cetera. So my response to that is, although we've been faced with these ideas for a long time, the ability to influence us without us knowing is way more sort of present and magnified. And that, for me, is the ethical risk we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think that was fairly illuminating, because you've basically been saying that even if part of the regulation is not to stop it, but try to understand it also deeply, so that we then really open up the risk box more. Any other response to any of the questions?
Yes, thank you very much for your questions. I'm just going to go straight. The first question was what we should do first, AI or ethics. I think we have to do ethics first. It's very important. And I think that was why Mark was saying, was trying to be a little bit pessimistic and warning that he was going to be pessimistic, that we have to do ethics first. If you build something without thinking about the ethics, then it's problematic. If a dignified life is what we are looking for, then ethics has to come first. So it's really important that we think about it. And is ethics killing innovation? Then what's the point of innovation? if we are beginning to argue that ethics and innovation are mutually exclusive, these are intertwined. They are not mutually exclusive. The AI actually comes out of a very problematic space. And what we can do is to mitigate some of the consequences that AI will have and continues to have on us, especially as African people. We've seen what is done. AI is actually born out of misogyny, and we have seen that it's misogynistic, it's racist, it's ableist. So we can't just say that because we need to innovate. We cannot think about these things. So I think it's very important. On one side, I think we focus so much on the intelligence that we also forget that we need wisdom. When I grew up, I was told that intelligence is not enough, that you needed wisdom, and wisdom from experience, from elders and others. I think we have to turn to that it's not just artificial intelligence that we need artificial wisdom. And these machines need to understand, they need emotional intelligence, they need cultural intelligence, they need context. I think that's really, really important. And in the end, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want AI to do for us? Do we just want to be part of this new thing? It's great, but not everything that's good is good for you, So I'm not saying it's not good for us, but we have to ask the question, what do we need it for? And what do we need it to do for us? We have not asked that question yet, and that's why we're asking that we should go back to rethinking what we mean by development, what we mean by progress, and we are defining it as a more dignified life, because progress and development so far, it's an international policy. It's a foreign policy of many countries. But what do we want? We don't know yet. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's you can be sure it's a heavy one, and it's not a thought that would end today. But it would be nice to hear what Prof. Mugabe now feels, or any other voice different.
Yeah, allow me to say something, and it is very exciting to hear what Mark is saying, what Divine is saying, vis-a-vis what the technology developers that presented earlier said. A clear indication that having a mix of discipline, orientation, belief in discussing this topic is very key, even as a way of charting the way forward. And just as a way of summarizing what I wanted to mention on this, we did a project which had a very provocative title, and that was Jobs or Artificial Intelligence. What is the way forward for Africa? And we intentionally coined that title because we wanted to provoke people, as many people as possible in the continent, given the fact that policies and decisions are made by policymakers. And in Africa today, when you talk about jobs, and particularly jobs for the youth, considering the increasingly growing number of youth in Africa, it is a major policy decision. It is something that keeps policymakers awake. And therefore, I wanted to mention, just from the discussion we are having, three things. One is that we must be able to differentiate when we are talking among ourselves as researchers and when we are talking to policymakers, so that we do not sway the policymakers in certain decisions. The truth of the of AI today, there are certain policymakers that would find justification not to invest in developing artificial intelligence and machine learning to spur economic development activities in Africa. The second thing I wanted to mention is we must appreciate that Africa is lagging behind in the path of digital economy, in the path of using new technologies to drive economic agenda of our countries. And some of the problems that we are addressing today not major problems for developed countries, which have advanced significantly in deploying new technologies to address their problems. And therefore, there is also need to caution that we must provide evidence that would then justify more investment in artificial intelligence and any other new and emerging technologies, even as we also take care of the ethical issues that are around that. And I wanted, therefore, just the third one to summarize from the work I've just mentioned, artificial intelligence or jobs. The truth of the matter is that there is enormous benefits that Africa will drive by intensively investing in new technologies to drive the economy. But it is also important that we must expose the policymakers the potential ethical issues that need to be addressed, even as we embrace the technologies. I think what we must not do as researchers is to create fears and to create a strong justification that may hinder the continent towards reaping the benefits of technologies. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Jenge.
Thank you, Prof. Ogada. Yeah, that was insightful. And I know that I have a very strong suspicion that both sides are right. Yes. The issue then is that thin line that we need then to find. Because if you watched a movie, I watched a movie called I, Robot, that would scare you, because then you'd start wondering, can AI ever reach that point at which a robot starts getting so intelligent that it can predict the developer's next action, so that if the developer wants to arrest it or wants to regulate him, then now he can take off, he can hide, he can hit back. Is it possible? Because that is a question that is very topical. Then if it is, then we need also to be scared. But remember also that the train has left the station. So those are some of the things. And again, regulating AI does not necessarily mean stopping them. It could even just mean compelling them to make it explainable, to make the logic be open, burst open, so that if I have an AI then that is telling me that these are your symptoms, then I feel that what you're suffering from is malaria. Then let them explain, because I also compel my doctor to explain why he feels that my diagnosis is malaria and not cholera. So so those kind of things are, I think, very, very heavy, but we certainly need to go around all of them in time. I don't know whether there is I know that Professor Abbott, Ryan Abbott, was thinking that his presentation is tomorrow, but now he was asking whether he could present, but I can see that now the mood is closing up, and we were thinking that maybe we can give him time to speak something around the same ethical AI, probably on the third day. Because then I am feeling.
Yeah, I want to say that it will be very useful that we hear his talk, maybe not today, but the third day, because the last statement that you have just made, the capability of AI or machines that can produce other machines, and then the fear that the eventuality of having machines that are significantly clever than the human being is a fear that many people have, and that is one of the areas that Professor Abbott has been working on. In fact, he has patented a machine that was created by another machine, and there were a lot of issues around that, which I think can provoke us even further. Great.
Thank you, Prof. So then I will share an updated program that will identify an appropriate slot for him, either tomorrow or the third day of 16th. Then I will invite everyone to try to come over to listen. Now, I think we have overshot our mark by slightly over 30 minutes, although it's been beautiful chat. I would want them to obey the program, which says that closing remarks will be done by Professor Gada / Angela Christiana.
Yeah, can we start with Angela if she's there?
I'm here.
Yes.
I'm
Great.
here. Yeah, I'll just be very quick. So I just want to thank everyone again, all of the presenters and panelists for their really insightful contributions to this seminar. And again, thanks to the African Center for Technology Studies for your commitment to the legacy of Professor Callistus Juma. I think he'd be very proud to have this seminar attached to his name, and all of this really great conversation. I'd like to ask the audience to post on Twitter or on your social media platform of choice, something that you learned or a new idea that you're taking away from this seminar and taking back to your work in your daily life. I'll also go there to share my thoughts because we're a little bit over time, so I don't want to take any more time. I'm really looking forward to day 2 and day 3, where we will be highlighting women in AI, because I'm sure as many of you have noted, and I did as well, today's presenters were primarily men, and there's clearly work to do in advancing equity in this field. So again, thank you to all the organizers and all of the presenters and panelists, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.
Great, and I'll also be brief on behalf of the team from African Center for Technology Studies to say a big thank you to all the presenters and panel speakers for the wonderful discussions that we have had this day. To take home, one is the issue of uptake, and I know we'll want to come back to that again tomorrow, and two, the issue of balancing between developing new technologies and emphasizing on ethics around deployment of new technologies. And I think these are discussions that we'll continue with even as we move to day 2. And then, of course, you'll see a big difference tomorrow, because you'll see quite a number of women coming in to present. A clear indication that women are not necessarily left behind, but they are even moving faster in this sphere. And of course, day 3 is 100% focusing on motivating women. So again, I would just urge all of us that have participated today, if there is a way you can extend the invitation to other colleagues so that they can be able to join our day 2 and day 3 meeting. Otherwise, kudos to all of you for the wonderful session that we have had, and have a lovely evening, afternoon, depending on where you are. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye. See you tomorrow from 2.
Tomorrow. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.